Okay, so let me represent your question properly and see if I'm clarifying her. So your argument was saying that history extended before the revelation of God-inspired scripture was given to people. So what happened to the people previous to that divinely inspired revelation in which you would believe in?
That's the summation of it, yeah.
Right, yeah. So Romans 2:12-16 answers that question because it says that the people who have never heard the good news, or the people who have not been given a law inspired by God through man, are judged according to the law of their heart. And God will judge between the secrets of men on the day of judgment. North Sentinel Island, those people have never heard of Christ. They're going to be judged whether they have stuck to the law of their heart, because we as believers believe in a form of objective morality that we know emotional and moral extremes. So we know the extremes of evil and the extremes of goodness and evil, but the middle ground of sin has been corrupted. So it says that they're going to be judged according to the law of their heart for those who do not believe or do not have a law that they need to apply themselves to. That's the answer to the question.
Okay, so everyone who, and by the way, how far do you think God believed, the earth existed pre Old Testament?
There's many different models you can make. Biblical timeline doesn't contradict let's say Big Bang creation of 13.8 billion years ago. So there's reconciliations for these contradictions you're bringing. But I mean, for example, I used to be atheist too. I was atheist, and I was a hardcore atheist. I actually believe that Christians were brain dead.
You don't have to tell me that.
Well, no, but I'm just saying as a testimony of who I was beforehand.
Yeah, I don't take that as a testimony though. I don't care. But okay.
Exactly. You're proving my point. Exactly how I was. I didn't care. I didn't care about human testimony. I didn't care about human experience. I didn't care if anyone actually gave me an explanation.
No, I don't care about the random person's testimony of I used to believe in this and now believe in this. That's it's not that.
All right. So what about a testimony of people dying and then seeing Jesus? Does that not mean anything to you?
Okay, but what about a testimony of people believe in God and then don't? My point is, anyone can find someone who's changed beliefs. That's not testimony. That's where I get into.
Well, I would say that the large amount of, or large majority of testimonies themselves are always correlated to Jesus. You cannot find one. Hold on. You cannot find.
No.
Can I finish this?
No, you can't. You can't tell me to hold on. No, because you asked me a question there, and I made one for a good interjection. Why is religion declining then?
Why is religion declining? Is that proves religion to be false? What kind of point is that? It literally. Wait a minute. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hold on.
But why is religion declining?
I was about to answer your question, but you kept interrupting me trying to ask the same. Can I answer yes or no?
You cannot interrupt me.
You literally. Oh my God, this guy. Are you guys seeing this right now? This is the pinnacle of an atheistic mentality. You ask a question 30 times, the person's about to answer, and then you scream over them when they're about to answer the question.
Insufferable. You said when I answered it, why is that proof that God doesn't exist? No, that's proof of why religion is declining. Okay, you said that most people don't believe in God and are starting to turn over to religion. You said that most people don't believe in God and are starting to turn over to religion.
I never said that.
And if you understand my point, don't misinterpret me.
Right,
I will speak.
Don't misinterpret, even though you just misinterpreted. Well, hold on. The Bible explicitly states, I hope you know that laughing doesn't make your case any better. The Bible explicitly states and says that during the end times, believers will fall away and there will be a great falling away. If you want to sit there and say, oh, there's a decline, hold on. I know, I said that there was testimony of believers who died and saw Jesus, or people who had experiences and eyewitness testimony. I didn't say that the consensus of today is that the Bible is growing in numbers. All I explicitly stated to you was stating that people have experienced things like near-death experiences, or experienced things in their own personal testimony towards Jesus. That's all I said. You're misrepresenting me by saying that I claim that the Bible is growing, and you made a counter-argument that wasn't even correlated to what I said to begin with. Of course, you have to misrepresent me. So, if you're going to say, let's say in the future, hold on, let me finish. Let's say in the future, I don't know, I mean, I understand you're laughing at your own incompetency, that's fine. But sure, you could say, the Bible's declining in slight numbers, that's fine. But there will be a mass falling away of religion in the end times, and that's already specifically stated. So if you're going to say, and use the argument, say, why are people falling away if God's real? Well, the Bible already calls it out to begin with. There you go, that's your answer for that.
People believed in sun gods back then, and then as existence went on, they just believe against it. Like this is a trend that's
yes, they did, and then the God of Israel punished them. So now I have a question for you. What is your basis for morality then, from the atheistic standpoint?
From the atheistic standpoint, just okay. So I don't have an absolute basis of morality, but I would say it's prevention of human suffering is my best understanding of it.
Atheist is obviously from evolution, right? So we have evolution, then we've evolved to have something called empathy.
Right.
The majority of people are born with empathy, leading to they wanting the greater good for humanity as a whole. And some people are born without it, leading to people as serial killers.
Right, I understand, and that's the atheistic stance, is that morality is subjective, and you can't really have objective morality in atheism because morality in this instance of atheism does come from evolution.
I didn't say subjective, I just said
well,
that I don't
if it's objective, something that's being objective is something that is similar to 1 + 1.
Oh, maybe humans cannot understand the objective morality. You understand that possibility, right?
Right, but then that would automatically... Hold on, but if you're going to say that, that would imply divine creator by saying that humans cannot understand an objective morality. But if there's an objective morality Hold on! If there's an objective morality that you're speaking of, then there has to be a creator of that objective morality.
But they could just exist without us knowing.
Okay, can I answer you now?
Letting you speak, okay?
No, you're not.
This, can I answer you now? And
no,
just
because you're not.
Discuss, my guy.
You need to, you need to take a chill pill. I understand the spirit of Satan lives in you. That's fine.
If you have an issue with it, leave. I'll speak to someone else.
No, because you're scared of the reality of your subjective morality. Here's my point regarding subjective morality, and I was arguing, and you were saying that objective morality exists. But previously, it was just stated that in the atheist...
I didn't say that. You misinterpreted. But go ahead.
Okay, so you do believe in subjective morality then, correct?
I said it could exist. We can't just prove it.
Okay, it could exist, whatever, even though that does prove God. But here's my point. In an evolutionary stance, right, your morals come from evolution and the decisions of human beings. And then eventually that gets passed on through person to person to person, through generations, and then we're born with it. Am I correct by saying that?
That's generally how evolution works, yes.
Okay, so in that instance where empathy and all of these things are caused by evolution, let's say at some point in human period, they had a civilization, right? Let's say even Muslims, right? The Muslims consensus, and Muslims in America will disagree on this, but it's obvious, and you cannot be a high Islamic scholar without accepting this. The age of Aisha was 9 years old, and he married her at 6 years old and had a relationship and intercourse with her at 9. In Islamic countries, in Islamic countries, that's perfectly accepted and normal, and that's the consensus of what their morality is. So, from an external perspective, not an internal, because I could say to you, is child marriage okay? You'd say no, absolutely not, because that's your own internal understanding of morality. From an external perspective, not your own internal, from a standpoint of outside yourself, looking at morality as a subjective mix of human experience and growth, from an external standpoint, is that okay?
No, because it causes suffering.
That's from your own internal critique, not an external one.
Of course.
Yes, you're judging it. Right, but from an external perspective, from an external perspective, you have to accept that that's okay, because there's no basis of morality. You're being intellectually dishonest, dude.
Okay.
So the very simple with it is, right? So since we believe in subjective morality, we obviously adapt to a moral standard. And the moral standard I believe in, I got from Sweden. Right? I live in Sweden. I'm going to share a lot of my moral values with the common Swede. Now, we obviously believe we have the superior morality. So when Muslims come to Sweden, they say, hey, we want to marry 9-year-olds. We're going to say, no, no, no. Just because you can do that in your own country, we're not going to do that in Sweden. So we're going to spread our morality.
Yeah, I understand that, dude. You understand my point, but you're dodging it because you have to. Because the reality of what you're accepting in atheism is ridiculous. So here's my point. Hopefully, it will actually make sense this time. When you say it's incorrect, you are judging according to the morality that you were born with. So that's why I said not internally, externally. From an external perspective, you have to accept that is okay. In a society where they accept child marriage, you have to accept that that is morally okay from an external perspective. So now I want you to say that.
From the external perspective.
Let me speak. Yes, if you can picture yourself in a world where you've not, read the Bible, but you're an atheist and you're living, would you think having a 9-year-old girl is okay?
No, it's not.
Right, why?
Because God made that moral standard to say it's not okay.
No, the Bible doesn't exist.
The difference relies in the fact that you're comparing a bed frame and a potato. You're using an example where my subjective understanding of reality doesn't align with the objective understanding of reality, but I'm saying that even if you don't know God exists, he still does exist, so it's still morally un-okay to do that.
Yeah, and I'm asking you, if you was living in a world where God doesn't exist, Can you not see why that's incorrect?
Wait,
Go ahead.
okay, so in a world where God does not exist, then there would be no basis for morality. Therefore, in your society, it would be okay. But I believe that God does exist, so I believe in any circumstance, it's not okay.
So the only reason you think it's not okay to f 9-year-old girls is because God exists.
Is because God created morality as a whole. And
Oh,
I already know where you're going.
No, you cannot interrupt people.
Oh,
and then
right. Oh, wait a minute. Do you guys catch
you
this?
cannot
You
cry
can't interrupt
when everyone
people and then...
interrupts you,
Oh my goodness.
And then interrupt them, okay? Get the f out of here with that.
Oh,
Jesus
relax.
Christ.
Yeah, relax,
alright?
bro. This
Let
is
me
the
not
spirit
speak
of the
on it.
shaitan, man. This is the spirit of
because he
Satan.
did it Christ to interrupt him, which is fine, but you cannot do it with other people.
Dude, I hope
okay?
you know you're
So my
embarrassing
morality,
yourself really bad right
okay,
now.
If that would scar that girl, okay? That would be so detrimental to that person's upbringing.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
Not because God exists, alright?
Alright,
This is
so are you
why
gonna let me
I
answer?
don't know where the f you're coming from when you say, oh, it's just about God's
You're
existing.
manifesting,
How can you
dude.
no, what the f are you talking about, okay? It's because it's wrong. They're a child.
This
here.
is such
That's
an
me
easy
speaking.
answer.
Now you
This is such an easy answer, bro. I understand, you know, you like the...
Go ahead, make the answer.
Hold on. And, you know, like, manifest, and it's okay.
like-
The answer would be obvious to that. You're saying, oh, there's all these reasons for why doing that action would be wrong. Yeah. Why do you think God created it that way? That's obviously the answer, but we believe that God created those things, which is why it's wrong. Shocker.
How does this not relate back to every other religion? Again, how does every other religion that happens to have these same views, okay? You can go to, you know, Islam, you can go to Hinduism,
No, they don't have the
Buddhism,
same
you
views.
can
I
go to
just
Jainism.
gave you a reason why they don't have the same
Islam.
views.
You seem very confused because external critique would be able, if I believe in subjective morality and someone else has their own subjective morality, then the external critique would be justified. The internal critique is the thing that you cannot do. So if morality is subjective, I can't say internal to your position. When the Muslims say I want to marry the 9-year-old, an internal critique would not be justified where I say it's objectively wrong that you do this. Because there's no reductio with internal to the Muslim position.
This is my point. Maybe it was a
Okay.
misunderstanding of what I was trying to say, but you understood when I mentioned my point about saying that internally you judged morality according to your own internal perspective.
But then
And by
no,
hold on,
it's
and by
external.
and by external, well, then you have no basis of external morality because it's all
So
internal to
external
what you
morality
grew
would
up with.
obviously be- Yeah, but the issue is you misused the words because you said you cannot do an external. You said verbatim, by the way. You cannot do an external critique on the Muslim on having intercourse with 9-year-olds. You said you cannot externally claim that that's wrong. Now, externally, I can have any critique I want.
I think you're conflating my definition of internal and external here in accordance to
I'm
other
using
ways.
normative definitions.
Okay,
Use
but
different ones, please define them.
Yeah, but I already defined them when I explained the argument, and I stated that by internal.
define them, no.
Oh my God! I stated that in internal, what I meant was that your own perspective of what you believe to be right and wrong, and I made that clear when I first initially gave you the example of what I was speaking about. Then with external. Can I finish, or are you going to keep talking over me? That by external, the definition that I meant when I was saying external was viewing it of a perspective of not non-personality, but you're not necessarily a person in this example. When you give a critique that you're talking about externally, you're still internally critiquing it because you're critiquing it according to your internal morals that you actually do hold. So by external, I'm saying complete, you remove the personhood out of the critique of what your internal feeling is, and you view it from a perspective of subjectivity of morals across multiple different cultures, not being grounded in an absoluteness.
You said verbatim the external critique. So an external critique.
But
just
did you not listen to what I just said? Did you not listen to what I just said?
Yeah, I understand what you mean, right? So the issue is that your usage of the word external.
You just said
is
redefine the
is
terms,
not
dude, and I did. So now address it.
Yeah.
Because of the logical hypocrisy. You sit there and
It's
say,
shady.
you sit there and say to me, you say, well, use this proper terminology the certain way unless you're going to redefine the terms. Then I
You used it wrong, bro.
then I redefine the terms for you to actually use them in the way that I intended. Then you start critiquing the word use again, even though I just redefined it. You see how you're attacking semantics instead of actually attacking the issue, even though I
Because the
just
semantics.
you-
the
alright.
I
semantics
just
is-
redefined the words,
I'm gonna-
doofus. I'm done.
Yes, I
I can't deal with